to serve.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf alongside a very happy Nick Wright this morning. Kevin Wilds is there. Eric Mangini is joining us. Coming up on a Friday morning, the winners, the losers, and all the questions that went into last night's NFL draft. But we start with the possible heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers. It is our rewarding performance sponsored by Capital One. What is in your wallet? So the Packers drafted their first offensive skill position player in 15 years. But it wasn't someone to help Aaron Rodgers. It's someone to replace Aaron Rodgers. Green Bay trading up the 26th pick just to select Utah State quarterback Jordan Love. Mainly so I could say, no love lost in Green Bay this morning. Or there was love lost. I never know how that one really goes. Nick, what's most important is that this move both surprised and annoyed you. Tell us why this morning.
Oh, I mean, what an absolute slap in the face to Aaron Rodgers. To be a fly on Aaron Rodgers' Malibu wall when he sees in one of the deepest wide receiver drafts ever, in a draft where there hadn't yet been a single running back or tight end taken. So you could have either had a top flight wide receiver, your number one running back, or your number one tight end. That his team not only, for the first time, as you mentioned, Jenna, in his career, drafts a non-offensive lineman, offensive player in the first round, but they trade up to do so, and that player's a quarterback. You were 13-3 last year. Hell, you were, if you include the playoffs, 14-2 against the whole league, not named San Francisco, and 0-2 against the Niners. You were a game away from going to the Super Bowl and losing, of course, to Patrick Mahomes. But still, it would have been nice to get there. And yet, instead of saying, how can we get past San Francisco, you're planning for the future. You're trading up to draft a player who you hope desperately doesn't play a single snap in 2020 or 2021. It is to me, Coach, the absolute definition of focusing on making sure you never fall off a cliff rather than focusing on trying to win a championship now. If you're Rodgers or a Packer fan, I don't know how you wake up this morning, Coach, anything other than beside yourself.
Well, you keep talking about Rodgers and saying his team. It's not his team. There are people who are in charge of running the team and looking after it, not just for the short term, but for the long term as well. And if you feel like you've got the quarterback of the future and you've currently got an older quarterback who could or could not be there, 2 or 3 years from now, you have to do the responsible thing and take the future quarterback. You said it. It's a deep wide receiver draft, so you feel like you can still get quality help for your current quarterback in later rounds. I think the one thing that this does send a pretty significant message to Aaron Rodgers that this isn't just his team, and there's going to be competition at every position. And maybe as much as it looked like they were getting along last year, things weren't as rosy as we envisioned it to be in Green Bay.
You know, Coach, you said something interesting there. You said it was the responsible thing. I just feel like that might make sense from your coaching background. From a fan background, responsibility is just like the most boring aspect of the draft. Like, I understand it's the right decision, but it's the wrong decision. It's like if you bought your wife a savings bond for your anniversary and said, like, it's for the future. It's the responsible decision. Like, I know, but there's no excitement there. I appreciate that you're planning for us, but this is a real letdown. There is one silver lining, though, Nick, and it was an interesting little note that Peter King had in his column, and he was talking about the amount of wide receivers taken in the second round or later who have been successful versus the first round. The only first-round wide receiver who has led in touchdowns is DeAndre Hopkins. Everybody else has been taken super late. So maybe there is help coming to Aaron Rodgers, but maybe it's later in the draft. If we look at the top 5 wide receivers left, maybe one of these guys ends up as a teammate for Aaron Rodgers. And friendly reminder to you, Nick, your guy, Julian Edelman, one of, if not the best wide receiver in the league, was taken in the 7th round. So there's plenty of help later on in the drafts.
Yeah, listen, okay, so then fine. Then wait to draft the wide receiver, but draft someone who can play this year. Aaron Rodgers, they just signed Rodgers to a new contract. He is 1,000% locked in with this team for at least the next 2 years, which means you hope the player you traded up to get does not play for at least the next 900 days. There are certain teams that are so terrified of one day being bad, they don't take advantage of when they can be great. Winning 2 Super Bowls in the last 30 years sounds awesome for a lot of teams, but when you've had 30 uninterrupted years of Favre to Rodgers and you've won 2 and you've only been to 3, there's a word for that. It's underachieving. And sometimes things are as obvious as they seem. They drafted Aaron Rodgers in 2005. Since then, they have now drafted more first-round quarterbacks than first-round wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends combined. That's insanity. It's just not maximizing one of the most talented quarterbacks the league's ever seen. And so there's no justification to this. Even if you wanted a wide receiver later, then draft an offensive lineman to help block Nicky Bosa. Draft someone who you want to play this year when you were a game away from the Super Bowl last year. And Jenna, not only did they not do that, they so desperately wanted the quarterback, they traded up to get him. Like, oh no, we can't let this guy fall off, have someone else come get him. I can't imagine Jenna being Rodgers this morning.
But Coach, let me ask you maybe from the other side of this. Rodgers is getting older. He's 36. He's been injury prone the last couple of years. Is it possible this was, I don't know, maybe a panic move by the Green Bay Packers, knowing that they don't actually need Love for a couple more years?
No, I don't think it's a panic move. Every year we see teams get deep into the season, and then their starter gets hurt, and they don't have an answer, and or the second guy can't be a good enough answer to carry them through the playoffs. So you get that type of insurance. And Kevin, you say you buy your wife a savings bond. I bet your wife would be pretty happy if her savings bond was Aaron Rodgers when Brett Favre left. And it's that type of thinking where you can compete for the now, or you can compete long term and try to win a championship every single year. And as much as you may want to look at this and say this isn't planning, this isn't trying to win now, it is the responsible, smart thing to do if you feel like you truly have the quarterback of the future to not let him get away.
I guess so.
Coach's
I mean,
point,
Nick, I guess
Go ahead, Kevin.
Sorry. Okay. Nick, I guess the other thing is here, like maybe Jordan Love is really good. Like maybe Jordan Love is really good and this proves to be the right decision. So maybe it's the right call.
But that's the idea. Of course, that's what they believe, and people will bring up, well, this is how you got Aaron Rodgers, and Brett Favre was there. Here is the problem with that line of logic. Spoiler alert, America. I'll bet all the money I have, and I had a little bit more thanks to yesterday, and we'll talk about that in a bit in Super 6. But here's the bet I'll make. Jordan Love ain't going to be Aaron Rodgers. I'll take any odds. Jordan Love is not going to be Aaron Rodgers. When Aaron Rodgers was coming out of Cal, there was real speculation he would go #1 overall. The Niners incorrectly chose Alex Smith over him. It was then an odd draft when no other quarterback was taken for the next 22 picks, and the Packers didn't even trade up then. Rodgers just sitting there, they're on the board, so they take him. Jordan Love was the 4th, 5th, or 6th best quarterback on almost everyone's board. He's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. The idea that, well, they did it Favre to Rodgers, now they're doing Rodgers to Love. Love ain't Rodgers. Rodgers is one of the 2 most talented quarterbacks the league's ever seen. We are in an era where quarterbacks are playing longer than ever. You just sign him to a contract extension, and you trade up to draft his replacement. Congrats. You got 0% closer to San Francisco.
With that, let me just follow up. Is it possible then that the Packers think that Aaron Rodgers' era was a disappointment, winning one Super Bowl, and maybe now they're looking ahead at least a couple years?
Well, I would ask Coach, if that's the case, then why did you make him the highest paid player in the history of the league a year ago? If you're already like, old and busted, need the new hotness, Jordan Love, why did you make Aaron Rodgers the highest paid player in the league a year ago and tie yourself to him for 20, 21, and probably 22? To me, there's a disconnect in logic there.
You made him the highest paid player because you probably had to. That's where you were from a market perspective. And nobody's debating that Aaron Rodgers is still a very good player. But the reality is that things change. And each year we see it late in the season where your starter gets hurt and the second guy has to come in and try to win for you. And it's not like Green Bay is immune to a situation like that. In addition, if you look at Rodgers and the situation that they had there, there's no guarantee that things are going to continue to be a great working environment. There's been thoughts and discussions and even rumors out of there that he's been difficult to work with. Maybe this is a way to help reel that in as well. Sometimes there's a message being sent with who you draft in addition to just what's to the naked eye.
All right, well, you said it, Nick. Rodgers sat behind Favre. Love will sit behind Rodgers. They each needed a couple years. We'll see what happens. Much more to discuss about last night's draft coming up. Did Bill Belichick make a big mistake not drafting Brady's replacement in the first round? That's next on First Things First.